If you thought Atlanta was going to be just race 2 of the season, yeah, not even close. Because the Auto Trader 400 at Echo Park Speedway didn't just give us a wild finish, it lit a fuse in the garage. Drivers were heated, team radios were melting, and the post-race interviews sounded less like, "we'll get him next week," and more like, "this is getting out of hand." And here's the crazy part. This wasn't one guy mad about one move. This was multiple big names, from champions to veterans to contenders, all saying some version of the same thing. The way we're racing right now, it's a problem. Let's break down what happened, why so many drivers snapped, and why NASCAR might have a bigger issue brewing than anyone wants to admit. Because yes, Tyler Reddick won again, but the story everyone left Atlanta talking about wasn't just the checkered flag, it was the fallout. Atlanta delivered a thriller and then turned into a fight. First, quick context. Echo Park Speedway, the track formerly known as Atlanta Motor Speedway, has basically become a mini super speedway now. Big draft runs, huge pushes, lanes forming and dying in seconds. And when it goes to overtime, it turns into survival mode. And that's exactly what happened Sunday. It went to double overtime, and at the end of it, Tyler Reddick held off CARSON to go back-to-back to start 2026. So on paper, it's a celebration. In reality, Atlanta was one of those races where half the field leaves thinking, "I got wrecked by somebody who didn't have to do that." And that's where the anger starts. Kyle Busch detonates after getting wrecked. Let's start with the loudest quote of the day. Kyle Busch had his race ended after a spin and hard contact, and he was not in the mood to sugarcoat anything on the radio. Right after it happened, Busch summed it up in one line, the kind of line that tells you he's done talking politely. "It's killed, single car wreck, effing cool. See y'all later." That's not frustration, that's rage. Then Busch gets out, goes to Fox, and puts a name on it, Noah Gragson. Busch's explanation was basically, "I was out of shape trying to catch it, and he didn't give me a second." Busch said Gragson rammed me as hard as he could and sent me spinning instead of just checking up for a second, making sure I was straight. That's kids these days. When Kyle Busch says kids these days, he's not talking about age, he's talking about driving standards. He's saying the respect is gone. And once one veteran says that out loud, it becomes a permission slip for everyone else to say what they're really thinking. And the wild part, Kyle Busch also praised the same guy who's at the center of the storm. Because if this was only about Busch versus Gragson, it's just normal NASCAR drama. But Atlanta wasn't one beef, it was beef stacked on beefs. And Kyle Busch himself gave us the first clue. A day earlier, Busch won the truck race, and he specifically credited his teammate for helping him close it out. Had a great teammate, CARSON behind me. So Busch goes from praising HOCEVAR on Saturday to blasting kids these days on Sunday. Why does that matter? Because HOCEVAR is about to pop up again a lot. Christopher Bell gets run over and everybody knows who did it. Now we get to the moment that had the garage buzzing immediately. Overtime restart, front row. Everyone sees the same thing. CARSON tries to squeeze a car into a gap, and Christopher Bell ends up in the wall before the run even settles. Bell's reaction afterward was telling, not because he screamed, but because he didn't seem shocked. Bell said HOCEVAR had communicated one thing, but he doesn't assume anything with him. That's what he communicated to me. You never expect anything, especially from him. That's not just a complaint, that's a reputation. And Bell didn't even fully roast him. He even said he needed to see a replay. But the key phrase is, especially from him. That's the kind of sentence that tells you the garage already has a file on you. And Bell also made the most NASCAR point possible. Nothing's ever expected or deserved here. Translation, it is what it is. But the tone was clear. This was avoidable. HOCEVAR's response? Brutally honest, and that's part of the problem. Now here's where this story gets complicated, because CARSON didn't run from it. He basically admitted what fans always accuse drivers of doing and said it out loud. HOCEVAR's mentality was simple. He saw an opening, he had help behind him, and he took his shot. He said, "I was going to shoot for it with the push. There was a shot there."
Then after the race, he went even harder on himself about the finish. I mean, I choked. That's not a guy trying to spin it. That's a guy who knows exactly what he did. But here's why NASCAR should be nervous. When a driver openly admits he's going to force the issue, every other driver hears that and thinks, so, I have to race you like you're going to do that every time? And that's how chaos spreads. Because if you believe someone will send it into a gap no matter what, you stop giving them gaps. And when nobody gives gaps, you get crashes. Bubba Wallace nearly wins and then says something that explains the whole race. Now, let's talk about Bubba Wallace, because he was right there. He had stage points, he was leading late, and in overtime he makes a move that barely misses, but it costs him the win. Afterward, Bubba's reaction wasn't, "I got robbed." It was more like, "I pushed the limit and I miscalculated." He said, "I'm just pumped that Toyota still got to victory lane." That's Bubba basically saying, "I wanted it, but at least it stayed in the family." Then he explains the mistake. "I didn't think I moved up that much to allow, Unfortunate, but man, what a car we had today." But the most revealing part was what he said next, because he credited someone fans wouldn't expect, Raja Karut. Bubba said he learned from watching how Karut managed his Xfinity race. Don't do anything to jeopardize a good finish. There's being patient, but you gotta be on the ball a little bit. That's important because Bubba basically described the tightrope everyone is walking right now. If you're too patient, you get swallowed. If you're too aggressive, you get wrecked or you wreck somebody else. And if you're fighting for a win in overtime, patience disappears. So now you've got drivers trying to be calculated aggressive. But on a drafting track, calculated becomes chaos fast. And the race winner says it best, "I have no idea how I won that." Even Tyler Reddick, the guy who won, basically described these races like a dice roll. After Daytona, Reddick admitted the truth of modern superspeedway-style racing. "I can't even believe it. You never know how these races are going to end. You just try to survive." That mindset doesn't just apply to Daytona anymore. Atlanta is starting to feel the same way. And when survive becomes the strategy, drivers stop racing like it's a 400-mile chess match. They race like it's a 2-lap bar fight. But now let's come to NASCAR's biggest problem. Before we do that, if you like this style of NASCAR news, simple, direct, do me a favor right now. Hit like, subscribe to Revived Wheel, and share this with one NASCAR friend. We're pushing for 1,000 subscribers and 100 likes to prove this channel deserves to grow, and your support helps more than you think. Alright, because now we get to the real issue NASCAR can't ignore. The big problem NASCAR has after Atlanta. Here it is. The drivers lashing out story isn't really about Kyle Busch being mad, or Bubba missing a block, or Bell getting put in the wall. Those are symptoms. The real problem is that the same name keeps showing up in the middle of everything. CARSON HOCEVAR. Think about it. Bell ends up wrecked in overtime, and HOCEVAR is the car forcing the move. Bubba is leading late and has to deal with HOCEVAR looming behind him in the final fight. The race winner's highlight is literally Reddick holds HOCEVAR at bay. And even in the NASCAR.com breakdown of the finish, HOCEVAR is presented as the aggressive closer who keeps coming up just short. This is why it matters. NASCAR doesn't just have an Atlanta problem. NASCAR may have a driving standards problem. And the entire garage is starting to shape itself around one driver's style. Because when one guy becomes known as the driver who will take the hole, the rest of the field reacts, and that reaction turns races into grudges. Why this turns into a NASCAR-wide crisis fast? Here's the part fans don't always realize. Drivers don't forget. They keep mental lists. And when a driver becomes known for being unpredictable or overly aggressive, the payback doesn't always happen immediately. It shows up later at a restart, a lane choice, a push that doesn't come, a block that suddenly gets way tighter than it needed to be. And that's how NASCAR ends up with something bigger than one race, a season-long spiral where drivers stop trusting each other. And when trust is gone on a drafting track, you get wrecks, big ones, which creates more anger, which creates more retaliation, which creates more wrecks. And now NASCAR is stuck trying to balance two things fans demand at the same time. Let them race, stop the nonsense. That's a hard line to walk, because the moment NASCAR starts policing aggression, half the fan base screams, "soft." But the moment NASCAR does nothing, drivers start policing it themselves, and that's when it gets ugly. So, what happens next? Here's to watch going forward. Do drivers start racing HOCEVAR differently, blocking him harder, refusing to help him, and giving him no lane? Does HOCEVAR adjust after hearing his name attached to chaos 2 weeks in a row? And most importantly, does NASCAR step in at all, or do they let the garage sort it out? Because Atlanta wasn't just a great finish, it was a warning sign. When guys like Kyle Busch are openly saying, "kids these days," and top contenders are basically shrugging like you never expect anything from him, that means the tension is real and it's growing. Atlanta gave us one of the most intense races you'll see all year, but if the drivers' reactions are any clue, NASCAR might be heading into a season where the biggest